You touch on other emotions as well in the book, which is terrific. Things like anxiety and fear. Rates of anxiety are obviously increasing in the general population. There are a lot of myths out there about anxiety, similar to some of the themes we've touched on before, about how, anxiety is the enemy. You shouldn't be afraid, but rather brave in the face of fear. There's a lot of the stories that are passed on. And,
Mm-hmm.
could you give us again a little bit of an evolutionary background on the value of fear and where this response really is occurring in the brain?
Certainly. So the fear is generated by the part of our brain called the amygdala that I mentioned a little while ago. It's part of the limbic system. It's part of our so-called reptilian brain, meaning that it's part of the evolutionarily speaking, old part of the brain. It's the part of the brain we share with lots of other animals, including reptiles. So it's the same part of the brain that will help a snake that's kind of sunning itself on the rock and suddenly notices shadow overhead. Get out, get off the rock and hide under the rock.
Mm-hmm.
And then figure out, was that shadow a hawk coming to eat me, or was it just a cloud passing overhead? That the amygdala in the snake works the same way as it works in the human brain. When amygdala perceives sign of danger, it basically tells us, run, get out of here, save yourself, stay safe. And only then will it allow us to figure out, was that actually danger, or are we okay here? So the evolutionary function of fear is to keep us safe. That's all the amygdala is trying to do. And sometimes the amygdala does produce an overly intense, unhelpful response, even though it's only trying to keep us safe. We often feel like anxiety is the enemy, right? Anxiety is preventing me from, getting on that plane, to go on a family vacation that I've been thinking about for so long, right? But I'm afraid that plane is going to crash, so I can't get on the plane.
Mm-hmm.
Or anxiety might prevent me from going in a job interview for a job that I really, really want, but anxiety is telling me that, oh no, you might fail, right? Or anxiety might prevent you from, doing your best in a game, because you're just so worried about failing your teammates that you become frozen, unable to function at your best. When these situations happen, we experience anxiety as, oh no, anxiety is trying to ruin my life. I just need to get rid of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think the most important thing for us to understand about anxiety is it's actually trying to protect us. It's trying to prevent us from getting ourselves into trouble. And it does overdo it sometimes. It becomes overprotective. But its function is always a positive one. The function of anxiety is never to ruin our lives. So when we learn to experience anxiety as something that is perhaps misguided but friendly, we're able to stop fighting with it. We're able to stop struggling with it, and then we can actually find ways to respond to anxiety in a way that's helpful.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. I mean, when we think of even physical pain as, again, a signal that's telling us and informing us that this is not a good position to be in and is trying to actually help us, versus the fear that most people and clients get when they do feel pain, that in terms of weakness or whatnot and potential injury, and how from an emotional aspect, this is a very similar thing of what you're explaining around. This is a signal letting you know that there's a potential threat or something that needs to be navigated. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, we do rather just run away than try to interpret these signals, right?
Exactly.
And of course, you talk about trying to recognize, obviously, the value of anxiety, as you just mentioned, and you outline different types of anxiety responses. Could you share an example or two?
Certainly. So sometimes anxiety just points us to something that's very practical. Let's say, you have a big exam the next day, and you just don't feel very prepared, and you're feeling very anxious about it, right? So this is a very practical kind of anxiety that tells you, well, go sit down and study some more, right? Anxiety sometimes is about safety, right? And you find ourselves in a dark alley at 3 a.m. in an unfamiliar place. We're going to be anxious, and rightfully so. And that in that situation, we really need to get ourselves out of that situation and get ourselves to safety, right? And then there are times when anxiety is pointing towards something that may not be addressable in a practical way. Let's say, you have that, big match the next day, and, you're feeling ready, you've been training, and, your team has been performing really well. But then, you find yourself going, oh no, what if I screw up? What if I let everybody down? And there's nothing you can really do about it, right? There is no, you don't go out and train at that moment. That's not going to help. There's nothing that really needs to be done. And this is the kind of anxiety that we're the most likely to get stuck in. It is the kind of anxiety that is pointing us towards what's important, right? It's pointing us towards, we just really want to do well. Our team is really important, and this particular match is really important, and all we want to do is do our best. And this is where recognizing the value of anxiety comes in such an important way, rather than going, oh no, anxiety is going to prevent me from doing my best. We can treat it as anxiety is just pointing out what's important to me. And it may be being a bit overprotective, but it is... it's not here to ruin my life. It is just here to remind me what's important. And if we can treat anxiety in that way, then we're able to disengage, not get stuck in it, and then be able to perform at our best.
Very well said, and so many fascinating chapters and areas in the book that folks can really dig into. And I love your introduction. You're right about how this book is about simple, practical solutions to improve the way you respond to life challenges and increasing your resiliency and emotional flexibility. Something that I think most of us are trying to do. And like anything, like nutrition, like exercise, fitting, in this case, mindfulness or biofeedback strategies into one's life can be challenging, right? Compliance is always challenging. And you provide some great tips on how people can, how can they get started with this type of training plan, biofeedback, mindfulness.
This is an excellent question, particularly because we can have all the skills out there in the world, but if people are not able to practice them, if we're not able to bring them into our everyday life, these skills are of absolutely no use. And habit change is hard. It's hard to. It's surprisingly hard sometimes to find 5 minutes in a day. When I start talking about making these changes with my clients, and I say, ideally you'll be doing this for 20 minutes a day. And they say, oh yeah, no problem. But then I say, well, wait, but we're actually going to start with about 5 minutes. Well, why do we have to do that? Because it's surprisingly hard to find 20 minutes. It seems like it's nothing, right? In 24 hours, 20 minutes is nothing. But we live such busy lives, and there's so much going on. Finding 20 minutes right off the bat can actually set us up for failure because we're not able to do it on a daily basis. So my suggestion is to start small. For some people, we may be starting with 2 or 3 minutes, when lives are just so difficult, their children and, spouses that need attention and jobs and, exams and interviews and all sorts of things that, keep coming at you. You start with a couple minutes a day. Or maybe you start with 5 minutes a day. And once that 5 minutes a day becomes more habitual, when it just becomes part of your day, you can extend that to 10 minutes, and then 15, and then 20 minutes. And it might take, a month or even 2 months to get to that 20-minute time. But the point is to get there, right? Because if we don't give ourselves a little bit of that startup time, we may never get to 20 minutes. And it's much better to start small and get to the goal than overshoot
plans and then crash out after 3 weeks, right?
Exactly. Yes. So that's the best tip I can give us. Start small, figure out how it fits into your day, and then extend from there.